Today, I am breaking the law while not in prison. This is heroin. This is a single envelope of heroin that costs between 150 and 250 shillings on the streets of Nairobi. That is the little quantity you get. It's stuck together because of the dampness and cold. I'm going to heat it up. Users can then either mix it with a cigarette or bangi, cannabis, or snort it up their nose the way I used to. Here you can see I'm heating it up so that it comes apart, it becomes a powder, not a big blob. In prison, we used to pay between 300 and 1,000 shillings for one of these envelopes, depending on supply and demand. It's a waste of money. I mean, I know I did it, I lived it, it messed up my health, but I learned a lot. I just wanted to show people that this is heroin, available everywhere in Nairobi or Kenya or all across the world, thanks to the Afghanis, but hey, they're at war. Anyway, there you go. Now, after scratching it together like this again, it will become a fine powder. I seem to be losing my touch. Normally, I used to be able to do it in one go when I used to be an addict. Now, that's the little stuff you get for 150 to 250 outside, 300 to 1,000 shillings inside prison. In April 2019, I was sentenced to serve 20 years incarceration, which equates to 13 years, 4 months in custody. The following Friday, I was transferred to Committee Medium Security Prison from Committee Main Prison. I started using heroin in 2012 after my appeal was dismissed by the Court of Appeal when I thought I had no chance of ever being free again. I continuously used heroin, cannabis, shash, which is a cannabis resin, and diazepam, commonly known as C, from then till 27th April 2019. 7 years, during which I never went a day without using heroin. Prior to prison, I used to drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes. I stayed sober right through my stay in remand custody, but when I was sentenced to death on 6th December 2009 and taken to committee maximum prison, I tried cannabis for the first time and used it on and off. It started off as trying, but with time I became a full-blown addict, spending millions of shillings on drugs, and I fight with my girlfriend constantly because of my drug use. I wouldn't eat so that I'd be able to use that money to to get higher than I already was every day. Trying to get to that first high I got when I used heroin for the first time. Unfortunately, that high never comes back, no matter how much heroin one consumes. It's like chasing a dragon that doesn't exist. When I started using heroin, I used to mix it with cigarettes and smoke it. Later, I started adding cannabis to the mixture to get higher. This is a photo of me smoking that so called cocktail. And in 2014, started snorting it up my nose. In Kenyan prisons, then there was no rehabilitation or drugs, as in medication, available to help with withdrawal symptoms like those that are available to civilians like methadone or prenafin. Since I snorted some before I was transferred from committee main to committee medium, I didn't feel any withdrawal symptoms that day or night. But the following morning, they started kicking in. The first symptom I got was diarrhea and vomiting all together. It's like both your orifices are just opened up. 30 hours after my last use. Then sweating all over my body and cramps began. Even if I threw a bucket of cold water all over my body, I'd still sweat. The cramps were all my joints, in my body, in my stomach. I would be hungry since I hadn't been eating much while using heroin, but no matter what I ate, none of it would stay down in my stomach. I also started getting very, very anxious. One question I'm sure you all have is why didn't I continue using heroin at community medium? Simply, it wasn't available. Heroin is an expensive habit, and at community medium, there was no calling because everyone had to work for the authorities. Though illegal phones were scattered around the prison, but you couldn't use them to call. On top of that, if found with a phone at committee medium, a prisoner is segregated or loses part of their statutory remission or both. So no one wants to risk that benefit. That afternoon that I started my withdrawal symptoms, I went to see the clinical officer at the prison. And when I told her my troubles, she laughed at me. Her name was Purity, is Purity, and is still working for Kenya prisons in the same role according to Facebook. I had hoped for some understanding or compassion as seen in movies, but she refused to provide me with with any medication to stop the diarrhea, help with the cramps. But as she told me, live with it. At that moment, I was ready to do anything to get a fix of heroin. I thought of escaping, jumping over the wall back into committee main maximum. But those are all crazy thoughts of a withdrawing addict. I then thought I need something simply to get high. So I spoke to someone that I knew from committee maximum who had been at committee medium for a while and asked him where I could get cannabis or diazepam C, and he managed to get me both, which helped a little bit, but nothing could stop the physical symptoms, the vomiting, the sweating, the cramps, diarrhea, and anxiety. That night I didn't sleep a wink, tossing and turning, sweating, diarrheaing the whole night. A night I want to forget. The following day was worse than the first. I stopped eating since I couldn't hold anything down in my stomach, including water. All I was doing was smoking cannabis, cigarettes, and swallowing diazepam C. There was no help from the authorities. I even spoke to the duty officer, and Inspector Mugambi, the duty officer, the following day, he laughed at me as well. That night I didn't sleep either. I was right now at 78 hours without using any heroin, and I managed to get a hold of a phone and spoke to my girlfriend about everything that had happened. And she was my pillar of support. She encouraged me to pull through, and that this was a blessing in disguise since I was expecting to be released in 32 odd months from that. I could use this time to get off my drug habit, addiction. After talking to her, my morale and confidence got a boost. I decided to work on my addictions. On the fourth day, the withdrawal symptoms started to dissipate slowly. The symptoms reduced gradually, and in 10 days, I was someone I hadn't known for 7 years. Unfortunately, I'd gotten hooked onto diazepam and cannabis, which I'd been using over those 10 days. But these things were not that difficult to get myself off with a lot of suffering, which I did over a span of 3.5 months. During that time, a lot of inmates who are addicted at committee maximum were being transferred to committee medium, the resentencing. And I would talk to them and tell them that if I could do it, so could they. And all of them had to. There was no choice because it wasn't available. Those 10 days were some of the worst in my life. I, I don't have any other words then. Unfortunately, after being released from prison, I started using heroin again. but not with the same gusto I used to use it with while in prison. This time around to stop, I had to use methadone, which is no longer available now for free in Kenya, from an outpatient clinic in Karuri. Methadone is a savior for heroin addicts, and if used properly, one can stop using heroin with no withdrawal symptoms in 6 months if they are determined and set their mind to it. Anyway, I hope you've learned something about drug addiction. I don't have the normal withdrawal symptoms because I've been clean for well over a year now. Actually, it's going to 2 years. Um, if you know anyone, share this video with them. I'm sure, hopefully, you'll give them the morale to stop using drugs. Anyway, please support me, like, share, subscribe. Thank you.